Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Monday, December 8th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 79.5 degrees, with a low dipping to 56.6 degrees, so expect a pleasant day with mild evenings ahead. Coming up on the show, we'll break down the reasons behind Netflix's major move to acquire Warner Bros. Discovery Studios and streaming operations, shaking up the entertainment landscape. We'll also examine the hurdles Democrats are hitting as they push to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies, thanks to Republican pushback in the Senate. Plus, other key stories from around the world, including updates on global markets and local impacts. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Big move in Hollywood. Netflix says it's buying Warner Bros. Discovery Studio and streaming businesses. Ethan's here to break it down. Ethan, this is huge. What exactly did Netflix agree to?
It's a $72 billion equity deal, about $82.7 billion including debt, announced Friday, December 5th, 3 days ago. According to the Associated Press and Yahoo Finance, both boards unanimously approved it, valuing WBD at $27.75 a share in cash and stock. It would hand Netflix, Warner's film and TV studios, HBO, the Max streaming service, and DC Studios. The Guardian and the LA Times describe it as one of the biggest media mergers ever.
And what's staying behind at Warner?
The linear TV bundle, CNN, TNT Sports, Discovery, HGTV, and the rest, gets carved out into a separate public company called Discovery Global. That spin-off was previewed back in June and is a condition to close, as spelled out in SEC 8 kilosecond filed December 5th by both companies. The idea, the Washington Post notes, is Netflix gets the premium content engines without the declining cable assets and their heavy debt.
So when could this actually close?
Best case, late 2026, possibly early 2027. Both sides told the SEC they're targeting the third quarter of 2026, if the spin-off, shareholder votes, and global approvals line up. AP says they expect a 12 to 18-month process from now. HSR filings are already underway, according to the company's statements.
What's Netflix actually buying in terms of IP? Give us the sizzle.
It's the Warner Vault, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, DC's Batman and Superman, The Sopranos, Friends, and The Big Bang Theory. There's also the Warner Bros. Studio lot and production arms dating to 1923, which the LA Times reminds us is core Hollywood heritage. Netflix layers that onto Stranger Things, Squid Game, and its global slate. Ted Sarandos said, quote, "This will entertain the world by delivering more of what they love," end quote, in comments carried by AP and Yahoo Finance.
And Warner's CEO? How's he framing it?
David Zaslav leaned into stewardship, saying they're preserving, quote, "the world's most resonant stories for generations," end quote. That rhetoric matters because creatives worry this reduces a century of studio culture to a content library. The Guardian notes those fears are already spilling into labor reactions we'll get to. For now, executives are emphasizing legacy and reach, not just cost savings.
Speaking of costs, what's the financial logic here?
Netflix projects $2 to $3 billion in annual cost synergies by year 3 after closing. William Blair analysts, cited by Yahoo Finance, say it should be accretive to GAAP EPS by year 2. Morningstar and Seeking Alpha add that the $27.75 per share price is more than a 120% premium to WBD's pre-rumor close on September 10th. That premium explains why WBD jumped while Netflix dipped after the announcement.
How did Wall Street react right after the news?
Netflix shares slipped about 3% on Friday, then were down roughly 2.5% into the afternoon on Sunday, per NASDAQ and TradingView. WBD, by contrast, surged 5% on Sunday and as much as 25% in after hours when the news first hit. Citi's Jason Bazinet told Yahoo Finance he only gave this a 5% chance beforehand because Netflix had long telegraphed it didn't want legacy assets. As recently as October, the LA Times notes, Sarando said they had, quote, no interest, end quote, in owning traditional networks.
That's a fast turn. What tipped them?
WBD's need to deleverage, along with a crowded streaming field where subscale players are struggling, set the table. AP reports Netflix outmaneuvered Comcast and a Paramount Skydance bid after WBD signaled it was open to offers this fall. Yahoo Finance's Ali Canal called this the lowest probability outcome, but it became the best path to premium IP without taking on cable. The spin-off made it palatable.
How does this change the streaming landscape if it closes?
The combined service footprint could top 420 million subscribers worldwide and command over a third of U.S. streaming activity based on Just Watch data quoted by AP and The Guardian. Forrester's Mike Prohl told AP that would make Netflix a Goliath. It also leaves Disney, Paramount, Sony, and Universal as the remaining legacy studios, which could compress variety but concentrate resources behind fewer global franchises. It's a scale play in a market with slowing subscriber growth and rising content costs.
Will HBO and Max just vanish into Netflix?
Not right away. The companies are signaling separate apps at first, with likely bundles or unified billing to reduce churn and ease consumer fatigue, according to Yahoo Finance. Over time, analysts expect HBO and Max content to be integrated or co-branded inside Netflix's interface. The Washington Post says those integration decisions could be shaped by regulators, concerns about tying and foreclosure.
What about movies in theaters? Netflix has a different playbook.
Netflix has pledged to honor Warner's existing theatrical contracts, a nod to the box office that AP highlights. That matters because Netflix has flirted with day-and-date releases that irk theaters. Keeping windowing intact could head off some antitrust critiques around harming theatrical competition. Still, how they set windows post-closing will be a flashpoint.
Give us the regulatory picture. Who's reviewing this?
The FTC and DOJ in the U.S. and likely the European Commission will examine the deal's impact on streaming, production, and theatrical markets. The Washington Post emphasizes the government's focus on vertical control of content creation and distribution, especially if bundling disadvantages rivals. The Trump administration has already signaled interest. On Sunday, December 7th yesterday, Trump told Yahoo Finance the combined market share, quote, could be a problem, end quote. Expect a lengthy review, potentially with behavioral remedies or divestiture asks.
Are lawmakers weighing in too?
Yes, from both parties. Democrat Elizabeth Warren called it an, quote, anti-monopoly nightmare, end quote, urging the DOJ to ignore influence peddling, as relayed by AP. Republican Roger Marshall flagged, quote, serious red flags, end quote, for consumers and local businesses. That bipartisanship suggests political heat that could slow or shape the deal.
And if regulators say no, what happens?
There are hefty breakup fees. SEC filings, cited by Street Insider and Market Screener, show Netflix would pay WBD $5.8 billion if antitrust blocks the merger. If WBD walks for a richer bid, it owes Netflix $2.8 billion. Those numbers underline both the risk and Netflix's confidence in ultimate approval.
You mentioned labor and industry backlash. How loud is it?
Very. Cinema United, which represents over 30,000 U.S. screens, told AP Netflix's model is an, quote, unprecedented threat, end quote, to theaters, warning of closures and job losses. The Writers Guild and Producers Guild are demanding protective conditions, commitments to theatrical windows, worker safeguards, and preservation of studio heritage, arguing legacy studios are more than content libraries. Streaming analyst Dan Rayburn told Broadband TV News he expects fierce pushback from unions and trade groups, especially if as many as 10,000 jobs are cut to hit synergy targets.
Are rivals pushing back too?
Paramount, fresh off an $8 billion Skydance deal in August, accused WBD of running an, quote, unfair auction process, end quote, favoring Netflix, according to AP and Time. Comcast's NBC Universal was also in the hunt, but lost out when WBD locked in the spin-off path Netflix preferred. Expect rivals to feed antitrust arguments around market concentration and access to must-have IP. The Guardian's analysis suggests the PR fight will run parallel to the legal one.
What integration challenges could trip Netflix up?
Tech and culture. Morningstar's Matthew Dolgen warned re-encoding and migrating Warner's vast library could take up to 2 years, complicating user experience and rights management. There's also editorial alignment, HBO's prestige ethos versus Netflix's volume and data-driven commissioning. The LA Times notes that reconciling release strategies, budgets, and creative autonomy will be delicate.
Consumers will ask, will my bill go up?
The short answer probably, over time. Consolidation usually brings price hikes or pushes users into bundles, as The Guardian's Paolo Pescatore warned. Netflix argues the competitive set is broader, YouTube, gaming, ad-supported platforms, to show it can't raise prices unchecked. But the combined leverage over premium IP is exactly what regulators will scrutinize.
Let's talk strategy. Why exclude CNN and the cable bundle?
Because cord cutting is accelerating, and those networks carry heavy fixed costs and shrinking ad revenue. By spinning them into Discovery Global, WBD cleans up its balance sheet and makes the studio and streaming assets easier to sell at a premium. Netflix avoids inheriting the liabilities that dogged WBD since the AT&T deal in 2022. NPR-style analyses of past mergers show that mixing declining linear with high-growth streaming muddles strategy and valuation.
How confident is Netflix about the numbers here?
They're signaling confidence, accretive EPS by year 2, $2 to $3 billion in synergies by year 3. William Blair's note, via Yahoo Finance, backs that modeling, though with caveats on execution. Oppenheimer's Jason Helfstein warned of, quote, prolonged approval processes, end quote, and a tougher operating environment. The stock reaction, Netflix down, WBD up, reflects those execution and timing risks.
Any signs of what the combined app experience might look like?
Think bundles first, then gradual integration. The Washington Post says keeping separate apps could help Netflix argue it's not foreclosing rivals or forcing consumers into a single walled garden. Over time, HBO hubs could live inside Netflix, much like the company's recent licensed tiles from other studios. Unified billing and cross-recommendations are low-hanging fruit for churn reduction.
Does this make Netflix too dominant for comfort?
That's the debate. Forrester calls it a Goliath, while Needham's Laura Martin told Yahoo Finance it, quote, redefines Netflix for the next 2 decades, end quote. But antitrust scholars, including Christina Di Pasquale at Johns Hopkins, tell AP regulators are wary of one platform controlling both creation and distribution at this scale. The companies counter that entertainment competition spans social video, gaming, and live sports they don't own.
What's the timeline again, relative to today?
We're 3 days removed from the announcement, and it's December 8th, 2025. The spin-off of Discovery Global must happen first, with a target in mid to late 2026. Then, assuming approvals, the merger would close late 2026 or slip into early 2027. So viewers won't see changes in their apps for at least a year, maybe more.
Any unique legal tripwires you're watching?
Beyond traditional antitrust, watch for content access remedies, mandated licensing terms or limits on exclusivity windows for certain franchises. The SEC 8 kilosecond include the agreement and plan of merger as Exhibit 2.1. Those filings outline reasonable best efforts for approvals and carve-outs that could be tested by regulators, as the Washington Post notes. Europe will likely probe impacts on international distribution and dubbing pipelines, where Warner has deep infrastructure. And the hefty reverse break fee suggests Netflix knows the antitrust risk is non-trivial.
How are creatives reacting inside Warner?
Quietly nervous, publicly divided. Some see Netflix's global reach as a chance to scale beloved IP. Others fear homogenization. The WGA's early statements frame this as a moment to lock in commitments to theatrical runs, room sizes, and minimum staffing, issues fresh from last year's strikes. The LA Times says morale could hinge on whether HBO's brand identity remains distinct.
Could this spark more mergers?
Likely. AP and Yahoo Finance say it widens the gap with smaller platforms, which could force consolidation or partnerships. Think Paramount Plus and Peacock revisiting tie-ups. At the same time, a tougher regulatory stance might deter outright mergers, pushing companies toward licensing deals and joint ventures instead. Either way, the center of gravity shifts toward a few supersized players.
Are there consumer benefits here beyond more titles under one roof?
Potentially better discovery and fewer forgotten shows stranded on small apps. Unified billing reduces subscription fatigue, and Netflix's personalization could surface HBO gems to new audiences. If Netflix invests in Warner's mid-budget films and series that struggled under cable-era economics, viewers get more variety. But those benefits hinge on price, windowing, and whether exclusivity walls go up.
What happens to DC movies and shows?
DC Studios stays intact under Netflix's ownership, if approved. That could mean tighter cross-platform coordination, films feeding series, games, and events, something Warner has tried to emulate from Disney's Marvel. The Guardian notes DC's reboot under James Gunn might get steadier funding and global marketing muscle. The open question is whether release windows stay theater first or slide towards streaming.
And that iconic Warner Brothers lot in Burbank?
It's part of the package. Beyond symbolism, the water tower, and a century of film lore. It's a production asset with stages, post facilities, and tours. The LA Times points out that ownership brings union relationships and long-term leases Netflix can leverage for year-round production. It's a tangible anchor in Los Angeles, not just a library on a server.
Any final quotes from the top that capture the stakes?
Sarandos framed it broadly, quote, "This deal is pro-consumer, pro-innovation, pro-worker, pro-creator, pro-growth," end quote. Supporters hear scale and investment. Critics hear consolidation and control. As AP put it, the next year will test whether they can deliver unparalleled storytelling without strangling competition.
Bottom line for viewers today.
Nothing changes this week. Over the next 12 to 18 months, expect bundles, more Warner titles licensed onto Netflix, and a steady drumbeat of regulatory headlines. If it closes, 2027 could bring a single destination for Netflix and HBO-level content, with a likely price to match. Between now and then, the real drama is in Washington and Brussels.
Ethan, great clarity on a complicated deal. Thanks for walking us through it.
Always good to be here, Grace.
This morning, Democrats are racing to extend Enhanced Affordable Care Act tax credits. Reporter Chloe Adams is here. Chloe, what's on the line in Thursday's Senate vote?
It's a 3-year extension of the bigger premium subsidies that were boosted during the pandemic and kept in place through 2025. They cap what people pay for marketplace coverage at about 8.5% of income, which has kept premiums manageable for millions. NPR's Morning Edition said today the push would run those subsidies through 2028, covering roughly 20 million people who rely on ACA plans. The urgency is real because open enrollment for 2026 plans ends a week from today, on December 15th.
If nothing passes this week, what happens to people's premiums next year?
Analysts say they'd spike. KFF estimates average out-of-pocket premiums for subsidized enrollees would more than double in 2026, from about $888 this year to $1,904, according to numbers public radio outlets highlighted this morning. And for some older middle-income buyers, the jump could be staggering. A 60-year-old couple earning around $85,000 could see annual costs rise by more than $22,600. Those are net premiums after subsidies, not the underlying rates insurers charge.
So why are Democrats pushing a clean extension, and what does that mean?
Clean means renewing the current subsidy rules without adding policy changes like new eligibility caps or restrictions. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer wants an up or down vote to prevent what he calls skyrocketing premiums. which NPR's Spokane affiliate reported he framed as the GOP's last chance before the new year. Democrats argue that with open enrollment underway, tinkering would only create more confusion. They've kept bigger fights like drug pricing or new ACA expansions off this bill on purpose, according to WUNC's coverage today.
What's the political reality in the chamber right now?
Republicans hold the majority after the 2024 elections, 53 to 47. It'll take 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, and outlets like Politico and Punchbowl News, cited by KFF Health News, say Democrats might get 0 to a handful of Republican defections, far short of 13. So Thursday's vote, 3 days from today, is widely seen as a high-stakes symbolic showdown. It came out of the deal that ended the fall shutdown, which traded reopening the government for this early December floor time.
Remind us how we got these beefed-up subsidies in the first place.
They started in the 2021 American Rescue Plan as COVID relief, increasing subsidy amounts and lifting the old income cap so more middle-income people could qualify. Then the Inflation Reduction Act extended them through 2025. KFF Health News noted the IRA's extension carried an estimated $64 billion price tag, citing the Congressional Budget Office. By this year, marketplace enrollment hit a record 24 million, and KFF says about 92%, roughly 22 million people, get some subsidy help.
And the broader coverage impact if the subsidies lapse?
The CBO told reporters, including CBS News and Reuters, that about 2.2 million people could lose coverage in 2026, with average yearly losses of 3.8 million through 2034. The Urban Institute, quoted by KFF Health News last month, expects even bigger shifts in the marketplaces, projecting 7.3 million could lose marketplace plans next year, with 4.8 million becoming uninsured. Researchers warn that healthier people will be the first to drop out, which makes the remaining pool sicker and more expensive. That's part of why CBO projects gross premiums only rising around 4.3% next year, while consumer costs jump far more if subsidies vanish.
Are insurers already pricing in the uncertainty?
Some are. KFF's review of 2026 rate filings shows median proposed gross premium increases around 18%, and a handful of states have added a few points specifically tied to the potential expiration of subsidies. Becker's payer issues highlighted Vermont, Oregon, Washington, and D.C. among the places where filings mention that risk. Insurers say they can't ignore the chance that millions will drop coverage.
Do we have real-world examples of what families are facing?
NPR's Spokane Public Radio talked with Amy Jackson in Butler, Missouri, who said her subsidized $300 monthly premium would jump to $1,250 without an extension. That kind of shock isn't rare, especially for people just above the old 400% federal poverty level threshold. KFF Health News said the uncertainty was already creating sticker shock as open enrollment began November 1st, and the fall's government shutdown, stretching from October 1st into mid-November, delayed negotiations and rattled programs that people rely on.
How are Republicans countering this clean plan?
They're calling it fiscally irresponsible and vulnerable to abuse. Majority Leader John Thune told reporters, in comments picked up by CBS News and Becker's, that a straight renewal isn't realistic and called the vote theater. He's promised a GOP side-by-side alternative, though as of this morning, details are still thin beyond broad outlines. Republicans want new guardrails, things like income limits, minimum premiums, or tighter oversight of brokers before agreeing to any extension.
Fraud has come up a lot. What changed that conversation?
A fresh Government Accountability Office report released last week. GAO's undercover testers got subsidies approved for 19 of 20 fake applications, using bogus Social Security numbers and fabricated income documents, a finding fierce healthcare and law firm alerts amplified today. GAO also flagged billions in unreconciled 2023 advance credits, payments to deceased people, and thousands of suspect enrollments or plan changes. GOP committee chairs cite that as proof of what they call exploding fraud and improper payments, with some outside estimates pegging errors at roughly $27 billion a year.
Do experts think that means the whole system is riddled with fraud?
Not quite. Health policy experts interviewed by KFF Health News say GAO's stress tests are designed to probe the weakest points and don't necessarily reflect the typical enrollee experience. But politically, the findings are potent, and they strengthen calls for new verification rules. Democrats counter that chasing fraud shouldn't blow up subsidies for millions in the middle of open enrollment.
How big is the price tag for keeping the subsidies?
A permanent extension would cost around $350 to $358 billion over 10 years, according to CBO and the Joint Committee on Taxation, figures cited by CBS News and The Washington Times this weekend. Democrats haven't offered offsets in their clean bill, which inflames Republican deficit concerns. A 3-year extension scales down from those totals, but it's still tens of billions over that period. That's part of why the politics are so hard.
Is there any Republican plan that could draw bipartisan support?
One idea comes from Senator Bill Cassidy, who chairs the Help Committee. He's been floating a model that steers money into health savings accounts for people in bronze plans, covering deductibles and copays instead of premiums. Something he told Fox News aligns with President Trump's views and could win broader backing. Spokane's NPR segment and MedPage Today both noted Cassidy was drafting text and sharing it with GOP leaders. But turning that into 60 votes by Thursday is a stretch.
What about the House? Any moderate compromise there?
A few bipartisan frameworks are percolating in the House, according to outlets like insurancenews.net and house.gov releases. Some pair a shorter extension, 1 or 2 years, with fraud fixes, tweaks to open enrollment, and boosted cost-sharing help. Others dip into state waiver flexibility or restrict abortion coverage in subsidized plans, which would repel most Democrats. None of that is ready for a slam-dunk Senate vote this week.
Where does the White House land, given the Trump administration's broader health agenda?
It's been fluid. Late last month, KFF Health News and CBS reported the White House briefly floated a 2-year extension with income limits that could reach up to 7 times the poverty level and required minimum premiums, but it fizzled under GOP pushback. The Washington Post and Punchbowl News say Trump favors expanding HSAs over, quote, enriching insurers, end quote, and might prefer no extension unless he can extract other concessions. Meanwhile, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has focused on separate rule changes, like leaner plan options and Medicaid eligibility checks, rather than touching subsidies directly.
So what happens if Thursday's vote fails, as expected?
Leaders could try to bolt a short-term Band-Aid onto year-end funding. Thune signaled that appropriations talks might carry a smaller temporary fix, Spokane's NPR affiliate reported. But there's no GOP consensus, and the calendar is tight with open enrollment ending next Monday. KFF Health News warned last week this could morph into a blame game as consumers get their 2026 bills.
For people listening who are on marketplace plans, what should they do now?
Enroll or update your application before December 15th to lock in 2025 subsidies. What happens for 2026 depends on Congress, but staying current ensures you get the best available help now. KFF notes most enrollees can find low premium options today because the expanded credits are still in place for this plan year. And watch for communications from your insurer and the marketplace in early 2026 if there's a policy change.
Back to the vote mechanics. What exactly is the bill on the floor?
It's a standalone renewal of the American Rescue Plan and Inflation Reduction Act subsidy framework for 2026 through 2028, No new eligibility caps, no abortion riders, no fraud provisions, just a straight extension, according to Senate.gov and Congress.gov summaries updated this morning. Democrats see that simplicity as a selling point, with time running out. Republicans see it as a missed chance to add reforms.
Has Schumer or Thune said anything lately that captures the mood?
Schumer said, quote, "This is the last chance to stop skyrocketing premiums," end quote, according to NPR's Spokane segment. Thune's response was to label the vote theater and not realistic, per CBS News. Neither side is signaling a deal before Thursday. The rhetoric suggests both parties are preparing to point fingers if premiums jump.
The numbers we've heard are big. Can you put the household-level impact in perspective?
Think about a family making just over the old subsidy cutoff. The enhanced credits shield them from paying a huge share of income on premiums. Without them, that share can balloon quickly. KFF's example of a 60-year-old couple shows why, when caps vanish, premiums don't just rise, they become unaffordable relative to income. And that's what drives people out of the market.
Final question. What should we watch between now and the Thursday vote?
Watch for whether Republicans coalesce around a single alternative. As of today, they haven't. Keep an eye on moderates who negotiated the post-shutdown floor time. A handful of GOP votes could change the narrative, even if they don't hit 60. And listen for White House signals. If the administration blesses a short, guardrail-heavy extension, that could open a path. Otherwise, we likely head into the holidays with uncertainty hanging over 2026 premiums.
A lot at stake, and not much time. Chloe Adams, thanks for breaking it down.
Thanks, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In Benin, President Patrice Talon says a coup was cut short before it could take root. In a televised address, he called the putsch a senseless adventure and said the situation is completely under control after loyalist forces, supported by Nigerian troops and air power, retook key sites. The plotters, calling themselves the Military Committee for Refoundation and led by Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri, briefly seized the state broadcaster to claim the government's dissolution, but were dislodged. Authorities say at least a dozen soldiers are under arrest, with some mutineers fleeing and possibly holding hostages. The foiled bid rattles Benin's image as a regional rock amid West Africa's recent coup, contagion, and signals. ECOWAS resolve has real boots and jets behind the bark. A fragile peace along the Thailand-Cambodia frontier has gone from truce to bruise. Thailand launched airstrikes along the disputed border after clashes that left one Thai soldier and 4 Cambodian civilians dead. Bangkok describes the strikes as self-defense against mobilized heavy weaponry. Phnom Penh accuses Thailand of initiating the attack. The flare-up shreds an October ceasefire, prompting evacuations of more than 35,000 Thai civilians and testing ASEAN's patience as leaders plead for restraint. With accusations flying faster than fighter jets and a peace pact suspended in November, the risk now is that a border spat becomes a broader regional splatter. China's export engine revved when many expected it to sputter. November shipments rose 5.9% year-on-year, even as exports to the United States plunged 29%, an 8th straight month of double-digit declines. The data point to a pivot with purpose. Manufacturers are rerouting goods to ASEAN, the EU, and Africa, cushioning the U.S. shortfall and helping propel the trade surplus for the first 11 months past $1 trillion, an eye-watering record that could rub salt into global trade tensions. Imports edged up 1.9%, hinting that the home market remains more yawn than dawn, despite stimulus. Call it decoupling with a side of recoupling, new partners, same hustle. The United Nations is shrinking its ask to stretch its aid. OCHA has trimmed its 2026 global appeal to $33 billion, targeting 135 million people after just $15 billion was raised in 2025, a decade low that forced help to reach 25 million fewer people. Humanitarian Chief Tom Fletcher cites a brutal funding climate and is pushing a radical refit. Fewer bureaucratic bottlenecks, more support for local groups, and a hyper-prioritized, focus on 87 million of the most vulnerable. Big-ticket needs include $4.1 billion for the occupied Palestinian territory, $2.9 billion for Sudan, and $2.8 billion for Syria. The bottom line: donor fatigue is turning triage into tragedy, with life-and-death choices now the daily ledger. And in Alaska's wilds, the Earth made a statement but spared the headlines. A magnitude 7.0 quake near the Alaska-Canada border rattled communities from Juneau to Whitehorse, toppling items off shelves but causing no reported injuries or major damage. The USGS placed the epicenter about 56 miles north of Yakutat at a shallow 6-mile depth. No tsunami threat was issued. Researchers say robust aftershocks are sketching a northwest-southeast rupture near the Hubbard Glacier. It was a shake without a heartbreak, and a stress test that monitoring systems and cross-border coordination passed with flying colors. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 3, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.